everyone, it's time for another Friday, which means it's Fan Friday, or specifically ESPN Honolulu's Fan Friday Talk Story. And, with the summertime, University of Hawaii is not having any games going on. We've talked with a few new coaches that have come on the scene, but there's a lot of news and a lot of information, a lot of stuff that's happening in the sports world locally, nationally. And, what a better guest than to have someone that has been a journalist in sports in Hawaii for many years, has kind of moved from one medium to the next, now with Spectrum Sports. And I'm talking about our guest for this week, Brian McInnis. And Brian, thanks for taking the time with us.
Hey, Dave, appreciate you having me on, being able to represent the Spectrum News app. And as you said, I'm their designated sports guy. So, we're only about a little more than half a year old, looking to just kind of grow the concept, and it's been fun so far.
Is it that? I didn't know it was that young. I mean, how many local journalists are there then?
We employ 4. It's myself and 3 others. So, like I said, I'm the designated sports guy. We've got Michael Tsai, another former Star Advertiser veteran, covering politics for us. We've got Sarah Yamanaka doing events and other assorted news. And then Michelle Broder Van Dyke is our main city reporter, as well as assorted news. So, we've got a solid team, but it's a small team. So, we all overlap a little bit. And especially this time of year, maybe one person's on vacation, out for one reason or another, we're all kind of covering various bases.
Now, in terms of your journalistic history, because although you're a young guy, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were actually with the Star Bulletin, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. That's how I got my full-time career started. Bounced around from the old Advertiser to the old Star Bulletin pre-merge, and then got hired full-time in 2007, right before my first day actually full-time at the Bulletin was going out to UH football practice, starting up fall camp, the infamous 2007 season. So, what a time to start your career, right? And just kind of walk out there fresh-faced and wonder what's happening. And then, lo and behold, it's like one of the greatest UH teams of all time.
So I'm sure at parties you get asked this a lot, because once they find out what you do for a living and how long you've been doing it, how you've kind of covered and seen sports in Hawaii evolve since, like you said, that early 2000s and up until now. So that's now the 10s, going into your 3rd decade, right? So when someone would, I'll ask you this question. Well, how has Hawaii sports evolved as a journalist in your scope? How has things changed since you've been covering it?
I would say substantially. It's a great question, though. And I have had to recount it from time to time, maybe not necessarily at parties. I don't know if I'm that cool, but from 2007, or when I was even starting to freelance, in those mid 2000s time period when I graduated from UH, there was so much less of an emphasis on the now aspect of getting stuff online as fast as possible while still being accurate. So that's kind of the constant juggle and battle right now, is you want to be quick, but you also have to be accurate. So churning out content really at all hours of the day is the name of the game now. And that just never was the case before. We still had, the print deadline being the almighty, the one thing we adhered to, 10 o'clock roughly that night, all your stuff has to be in, and that's all you really worried about. And now the game has totally changed, and people are blogging, podcasting, making Facebook video spot appearances for ESPN Fan Fridays, and just all kinds of miscellaneous stuff that just has totally, today I was up at Le'ie for UH basketball, previewing the North Shore Classic that UH is going to be in. And I was there taking video next to the TV guys. So it's the lines have definitely blurred in a lot of those respects.
Okay, going back to those 10 p.m. deadlines, most games would go past 10. So what was the status? You're covering a football game at Aloha Stadium, and it's Going past 10:30, how did you handle that kind of situation?
Yeah, on a lot of those deadline nights, for prep football, football, basketball, volleyball, you have a special extended deadline, what's known in newspaper circles as a replate, a first additional, go off to the presses, and a certain number will get printed, and then once your story, the reporters are out in the field writing their stories on deadline. Once they send them off to the editors to get quickly copy edited, those then get replated, as the term goes, into into that next day's edition on the fly. As the copier is running. For us at the Star Advertiser was over at the Kapolei press back in the Star Bulletin days, was at the midweek press in Kaneohe, and it would basically you try to get it to as many households or copies in circulation as you could, but there would be X number of copies that wouldn't have the replated product, wouldn't have the final edition of the night. So you just had to try to be as timely as possible. And those made for some definite, stressful moments on deadline, knowing that you were under the gun like that.
No wonder all those writers at Aloha Stadium and even at the Stan Sheriff after the game, they were all so grouchy because they don't want to talk to you because they had stuff to do and they had very little time to do it. So I know now not to take it so personally.
There you go. Yeah, if we're rude to you or cussing you out, Dave, I'll apologize retroactively for all my compadres in the newspaper biz. But yeah, no, that you could tell like when a newspaper writer is on deadline. There's a certain pace to their step, a certain cadence to their voice that lets people know they're not to be messed with at that moment in time. Yeah, UH basketball games, UH football games, prep football games are some of the most probably stressful on deadline because you're, in those times you were taking your own stats. And I mean, there's outlets like Scoring Live that have all that at the touch of a button now. But at the time, you're doing your own numbers, trying to work that out on deadline as well as write a story. So I have all the respect in the world to folks who can, meld those things and do them at a high level, efficient level, and an accurate level.
Well, you're one of those. By the way, you're also one of the nicest ones. There's some of the other guys that are pretty mean to me, post after the game. But Brian McInnis joining us from Spectrum News. First of all, where can you get access to Spectrum News?
Yeah, man. So it's primarily we're an app. It's a free to download app. It's on the either Apple or Android products. You go to the App Store. You can download it for free. You can open it up for free and access the content for free. For the first 30 days, I believe anyone can access it. You just enter what market, because the Spectrum News has launched in a number of markets: SoCal, Texas, St. Louis, Maine, some other assorted places like that. So they're cropping up in different parts of the country. You just enter what region you want. So for us, it would be, here, obviously, and then pretty much all the associated content that's coming out of here, as well as some of the SoCal content comes in through us. That's what appears on the Spectrum News app when you open it up. And after 30 days, I think you get prompted to enter your Spectrum login if you have any Spectrum cable, internet, or phone service, any of those, and you have a Spectrum account for those. I believe it will accept that, and you have free access to it. It's like a tool to help Spectrum retain its subscriber base. Basically, that's what the whole driving goal of the Spectrum News app is. But we operate like a standard newsroom with an editor, associate producers, and then the reporters who report things as they would if it was a newspaper or a TV station or another media outlet.
Nice. I have the app, and right, I tell you what, it's great. I love it. I'm waiting. I'm not yet to the 30-day mark, so that'll be the next step as a technical challenge, but I'll definitely keep it on. So I wanted to talk about a little bit some of the stories you wrote recently, and we talked a little bit about prep sports at University of Hawaii, but a story you wrote about HPU athletics, the issue with the women's basketball program, and it's about the former coach, Reed Takatsuka, getting relieved of his duties, a new coach coming in. There were some, I guess, rumblings and issues related to how he handles the team, so forth and so on. What other elements of that story kind of come top of mind when you think back on that?
Yeah, no, that was one of maybe the more involved stories I've had to write about since I've been working for Spectrum News since December is when I came on board, and honestly that was one of the first, I would say, 5 to 10 stories I really got to kind of delve into, because at the start of December or end of November was when HPU suspended Reed Takatsuka, their very successful women's basketball coach, guy who had led them to several either NCAA Division II tournament appearances or regular season conference championships in the Pac West. He had them competing at a high level year in and year out, and then suddenly he gets suspended for no reason given by HPU until we actually ran an initial story that he had just disappeared from the bench for no apparent reason given, and that several prominent players had also disappeared. So after that came out, then they released a statement saying he was under investigation for some alleged issues that involved. They didn't actually specify what those issues were at the time, but by the time they officially dismissed him in April, Reed Takatsuka, it was for things like mental and verbal abuse of players was basically what it amounted to. So had a chance to interview several of the players on the team, many of whom disagreed with the decision to remove Coach Takatsuka. They backed him. Other players did not. They agreed with the assessments, the allegations, because those are where the allegations came from, was from a certain number of players on the team. So HPU ultimately decided they had to remove Coach Takatsuka despite the considerable success. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That's just the route they took after conducting their investigation. And they the most recent one I wrote about that, Dave, was that they hired a new full-time coach, Katie Novak. She came from a Division III school in Texas, and about 5 years, I believe, of head coaching experience there, helped turn around that historically struggling program. So I think that's what the HPU athletic director is looking for here, because they lost pretty much all of their main talent from their team the last couple of years. So they're looking at probably at a pretty hefty rebuild. And it was one of the more, involved, intriguing stories I've got to, try to dig into since I've been working for Spectrum News.
And I kind of found it interesting is because we can connect that even with University of Hawaii with the whole football program and former coach Todd Graham. There was all that issue about, player unrest, and they were issuing, or players were mentioning that, similar elements, right? There's mental strain and how he was handling his players. I had seen those stories pop up here or there, even on the high school level here. But if you were to look back, is that one of the kind of a topical story that has maybe gotten more coverage or more popping up maybe within the last 5 years than, say, back in the mid-2000s?
I would say, Dave, that if you just take those two stories as two local examples here in the last 6 months, two prime examples of players having a larger, outsized role in shaping the fortunes of the coaches they play under. It in both cases it took a handful of players to really kind of get their voices out there through a number of different mediums. In the case of Todd Graham and the University of Hawaii football team, the players, several called their own Twitter space conversation that really was the catalyst for a lot of this, right? And seemed to galvanize a lot of the attention that ultimately led to certain dominoes falling, and then a Senate hearing where Todd Graham and UH administration come under fire, and the next thing a week or two later, that's it. Todd Graham is stepping down, and you're now we have Timmy Chang and a whole new chapter of the football program. So it just goes to show how empowering really players can be if they kind of take it upon themselves. And I don't envy a coach who has had the perception of wronging his players, whether it's right or wrong. If that's what the prevailing narrative becomes, it seems like it could be hard to back that, get away from it. So that was also kind of the case in this HPU one, where It didn't seem like it was the majority of the players on the team, but it was a certain faction of players who brought up these issues, and they got the ear of the athletic director, and ultimately they decided that it was valid enough to make a change there as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think we've seen other examples like this on the mainland, but those are two prime ones here locally.
You know, I always used to hear in sports journalism and journalism in general, right? You want to be the person, or you want to be the medium that breaks the story first. Yeah, who gets it out there, and is the one that is credited for, according to Spectrum News, you know, that everyone has to tag on to. Is that still, like you're mentioning, it's more of a 24/7 kind of cycle now, but is that still a priority to be the first, or is it more to get more information on that story?
You know, I think there is still some of that cachet that comes with being the first, but it's definitely reduced, I would say, from the old print newspaper days of, you know, you were basically waiting until say you break something that morning newspaper. You basically got to, you know, enjoy being the guy out on Front Street for like a full 24-hour cycle before your rivals or competitors had a chance to, you know, do a rebuttal and see what they came out with the following morning. So I think there was a lot more to it at that time as far as being the first. Now maybe you're the first for a couple minutes, you know, on Twitter before somebody else comes out with their own edition. So it really, I would say, if you are first, there's a larger chance that your link or your story is the one that gets picked up and run with, as far as number of views, number of likes, retweets, all that stuff. But that's certainly not always the case. Somebody who came along later has a catchier headline, a new spin on the story, a better photo, things like that. Suddenly theirs could be the prevailing thing that gets circulated the most, and you're first, but you're wondering what the heck just happened. You know, so honestly, Dave, it's not all about that anymore, for sure.
You know, during your journalistic career, you had a little bit of a break from covering sports when you were with Pacific Business News. So you covered business-related topics, but you also, I remember reading some of your stuff, you included sports-related business news. So it comes to the concept of money and the business side of athletics. And with the latest information you hear about, college athletics, or specifically college football, how the money has really driven colleges from changing to a different conference, USC and UCLA wanting to bolt to the Big Ten because there's more TV revenue there. In the area of sports and business, are we entering a totally different kind of lens now when we look and we cover college football, for example?
I mean, it's constantly evolving, for sure, and it's totally a business-driven sport. I mean, it's so much about it boils down to who's got, you know, the capacity to generate the most money. It's kind of hijacked college football, college sports as a whole, because football is the driver for the rest of the bus that is college athletics, right? And now we're looking at a potential future of two super conferences. I mean, you could say we're well on our way to just how these last several moves have shaken out, with Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, and as you said, UCLA, USC to the Big Ten. As of today, the Pac-10 or Pac-12, I guess they're still known for the moment, and Big 12 were in some kind of negotiation to see if they could partner, potentially discussing a merge. I think the last thing I read was that didn't pan out, and they weren't able to work anything out. But it just goes to show that there is no tradition anymore. Everything's going to be at the convenience of the next profit opportunity that comes the way of these presidents, these administrations, athletic departments. So if you're a team like UH and you're in the Mountain West, I mean, it's, you know, I've seen all the speculation about how can, you know, UH put themselves in a position where they can move up to be marketable to the Pac-10 or Pac-12. the void, the gap there is just still so huge that I just, if you're just taking a look at it from a grounded perspective, it's UH is just going to have to roll with what punches come its way, honestly, and that there's probably going to be some moves before it's all said and done, but we don't know what those are yet. Those repercussions, I think a lot of it will have to do with the Pac-12 and then potentially the Mountain West, perhaps having to make some adjustments based on if any members get sucked up into the Pac-12. But we're not quite there yet. Maybe we can go into this coming football season without having to be all in a full panic mode about the future of the league and where UH fits in all of it.
I've heard that it's very tough as a journalist like yourself covering sports to have a life, because you're all night, every night you could be covering an event, and then you're writing into the wee hours. Then you go to bed and you wake up and you start that cycle over again. Kind of like that. It's an odd work schedule, right? You're kind of usually working more at night from about mid or early afternoon all the way past midnight. And so that's when everything's happened. That's when you can go out and hang out. Hey, Brian, you want to go have a beer? Sorry, I got to work tonight. But I do know you have a very good hobby. You enjoy gaming. Is that still kind of a part of your daily routine?
Gosh, I guess I wouldn't say it's daily anymore, Dave. But yeah, I mean, I do enjoy getting in some gaming when I can, for sure. Even like calling it game, like one of my regular things these days is weekly trivia. I'll do like one bar trivia a week, and that's to me, that's honestly taken up a lot of that free time that I maybe would have had to do traditional console video gaming in the past. But yeah, absolutely, I still enjoy it. I've got a chance to cover a little esports lately. In my opinion, it falls under sports. I know that's not the case for everybody, but for the University of Hawaii and also at the state level, they're really kind of coming out with some exciting stuff right now. So yeah, to answer your long-winded answer, but yes, it is still part of my life.
What's the games? I mean, I'm not a gamer, so what you tell me, I'm not going to know it. But for all those gamers who do tune in, what are the games that Brian McInnis digs into?
For a while, it was Rocket League, and I wouldn't say I'm retired yet, but I've definitely been winding down my competitive play on there. If anyone out there is familiar and was wondering, I was a high diamond / low champ was my peak. So that's not the upper echelon by any means, but in my opinion, it's a respectable level. So I can live with that being like my retirement peak if in fact I am done, but we'll see. Some other casual stuff, like a dabble in like Fall Guys, nice little, almost like Squid Game, but way more cutesy and PG rated.
I'll go on record as saying I have no idea anything you just said, but, I will educate myself. Fall Guy to me was a TV series back in the 80s, but I know that has nothing to do with this element of gaming. What else do you do when you have the bare moments of free time besides that and besides trivia? You have anything else? Yeah,
well, I do like to think I take advantage by going for a run every so often. I mean, in the evenings, I think like I have to find that sweet spot between that day's, sports stories, the daytime stories, and then finding that window before, going to a game at say 7:00 at night. So there's a sweet spot in there where maybe I can get in a run before it gets too late. I did sign up for the marathon in December, so we'll see how much I regret that in a few months from now. But I in theory, will be ramping up preparations for that. So we'll see.
Is that your first marathon?
Yes, it will be my first one.
Okay, can I give you a tip?
Absolutely.
Okay, one tip. I've done 3 marathons. Okay, and the most important tip someone ever told me is, well, I'll give you 2. Wear a light, dry fit shirt, which is pretty common. But the other thing is tape down your nipples. Okay, because even with a light dry fit shirt, that bouncing and that rubbing for 26. Oh my God. And I endured that the first one. And let me tell you, you can't do anything when right here is extremely sensitive. So Band-Aid or whatever, tape down your nipples.
Thank you, Dave. I'll take that to heart.
Literally.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. I love the Spectrum News app. To me, it's very on point, grabbing all the good stuff. So I appreciate all your work there and look forward to seeing you at the next game. Thanks so much for taking the time with us.
My pleasure, Dave.